Շուշան Դոյդոյանին լսենք եւ ապա անցնենք առաջ։
Շնորհակալություն, պարոն Մարտիրոսյան, երևի արդեն սկսենք ձեր թույլտվությամբ։ Ողջույն բոլորին, ողջույն Վուդի, ողջույն պարոն Մարտիրոսյան, ողջույն երեխեք ջան։ Շատ ուրախ եմ այստեղ ողջունել ձեզ, թեև առցանց, բայց այսպես ոնց որ ավելի ջերմ ու մոտ է մեր շփումը ստացվելու առաջիկա 2 ժամերի ընթացքում։ Շատ կարևոր խնդրի մասին ենք խոսելու, հակամարտությունների լուսաբանման ընթացքում լրագրողների դերի, նրանց առաքելության մասին, ինչպես կարող եք դուք որպես լրագրողներ նպաստել հակամարտությունների խաղաղ կարգավորմանը մի կողմից, եւ նաեւ ինչպես ապահովեք ձեր անվտանգությունը հակամարտությունների ընթացքում լուսաբանելու եւ ձեր առաքելությունը իրականացնելու ընթացքում։ Այս իրականում մենք նախաձեռնել ենք դասընթացների շարք, սա առաջինն է այս դասընթացը, որը կվարի Vudi Xhymshitին, վավերագրող, լրագրող, ֆոտո լուսանկարիչ Մեծ Բրիտանիայից, ով Հայաստանում էր եւ Արցախում էր դեռևս անցյալ տարեվերջին, պատիվ ենք ունեցել իր հետ աշխատելու այս ծրագրի առաջին բաղադրիչի շրջանակում եւ հիմա նաեւ սիրով մեր համագործակցությունը շարունակում ենք արդեն Երևանի պետական համալսարանի հետ համագործակցությամբ, որպեսզի նպաստենք ձեր ուսանողների հմտությունների եւ գիտելիքի աճին, բարձրացմանը, հզորացմանը, որպեսզի դուք լինեք պատրաստ նման կարևոր առաքելություն իրականացնելու գործընթացում։ Այս դասընթացը իրականացվում է մեդիա մենթորությունը Հայաստանում ծրագրի շրջանակում, միջազգային մեդիա աջակցություն դանիական կազմակերպության աջակցությամբ, ինֆորմացիայի ազատության կենտրոնի եւ Երևանի պետական համալսարանի ժուրնալիստիկայի ֆակուլտետի հետ սերտ համագործակցությամբ։ Այժմ սիրով կուզեի խոսքը փոխանցել դեկանին, մեր սիրելի պարոն Մարտիրոսյանին, ողջունի խոսքով հանդես գալու եւ սկսելու նաեւ այնուհետեւ մեր դասընթացը։ Խնդրեմ, պարոն։
Շնորհակալ եմ Տիկին Դոյդոյան, ես նույնպես ողջունում եմ մեր հարգարժան հյուրին, Vudi Xhymshitին, ով իր ոլորտի հայտնի անուններից է, ինչպես դուք նշեցիք, լրագրող, վավերագրող, լուսանկարիչ, մեդիա փորձագետ, մարդ, ով այս հանդիպման ժամանակ մեր ուսանողներին իր փորձը փոխանցելու, իր հմտությունները փոխանցելու հրաշալի հնարավորություն ունի եւ կարծում եմ, որ մեր ուսանողները այս հանդիպումը երկար կհիշեն, ինչպես իմ խոսքի սկզբում ասացի, օգտագործելով այդ հմտությունները նաև իրենց հետագա գործունեության, պրակտիկ գործունեության ընթացքում։ Համոզված եմ, որ նման դասախոսությունները, նման քննարկումները, հանդիպումներ ուսանողների հետ շատ կարևոր են ու շարունակական պիտի լինեն։ Ուրախ եմ արձանագրելու, որ բացի այս հանդիպումը եւս 2 դասախոսություն մենք ուրեմն նախատեսում ենք։ Տիկին Դոյդոյան, պիտի խնդրեմ հիշեցնել հաջորդ 2 դասախոսությունների օրերը եւ գիտեմ, որ այս հանդիպմանը, այս դասախոսությանը մասնակից ուսանողները այնքան շատ
And also it should be noted that the students participating in today's session will also promote it among their peers, and they will instill more enthusiasm among their fellow students. I wish you a lot of good luck. Thank you very much, Mr. Matterson. I would like to remind you that next week on March 24th, we're going to have another session, and on March 30th, we will have already other international experts. And now we will gladly give the floor to Harutun.
Thank you, Shushan and Mr. Martirosyan. So today we are going to have a meeting with Vudi, who has a lot of experience regarding to conflict reporting and also safety and security trainings. I will turn into Armenian to explain how this meeting is going to be clear for the Armenian student, Vudi. Հարգելի ուսանողներ, խնդրում եմ, եթե ցանկություն ունեք լսելու օրիգինալ անգլերեն բանախոսությունը, ապա լինել English channel-ի վրա, եթե օրիգինալն եք ցանկանում լսել, այսինքն անգլերենով Vudi-ին, եթե ցանկանում եք լսել հայերեն թարգմանություն, ապա interpretation բաժնում դուք կտեսնեք երկրագունդն է, այնտեղ փոխեք եւ եղեք French channel-ի վրա։ Հայերենը Zoom-ում հասանելի չէ, այդ պատճառով եղեք French channel-ի վրա։ Եվս մեկ անգամ հիշեցնեմ, եթե ցանկանում եք օրիգինալը լսել անգլերենով, ապա եղեք English channel-ի վրա, եթե ցանկանում եք լսել հայերեն թարգմանությամբ, ապա եղեք French channel-ի վրա։ Շնորհակալություն։
Vudi-ն նոր տեղեկացնում է, որ լսում է թարգմանությունը հայերենով։ Ինչ որ խնդիր կա։
Խնդիր չկա, ուղղակի Քրիստինեն կարծեմ, երբ որ ես հայերեն եմ խոսում, ինքը անգլերեն channel-ում է թարգմանում, եւ երբ որ ես անգլերեն եմ, երբ որ հայերեն եմ խոսում, անգլերեն եմ։
Շատ լավ։ Միայն մեկ խնդրանք, ես խնդրում եմ մինչ սկսելը, եկեք բոլորս վիդեոները մի պահ միացնենք, մի հատ սիրուն խմբային լուսանկար անենք եւ այնուհետեւ սկսենք արդեն մեր միջոցառումը։ Երեխեք ջան, մի հատ ձեր սիրուն դեմքերը միացրեք, համ էլ Vudi-ն ձեզ կտեսնի, թե ինչքան պայծառ լուսավոր ուսանողներ ունենք մեր ֆակուլտետում։ Այկան սիրունները, նաեւ սիրունը։ Միացեք, Vudi, I just wanted you to show the faces of our bright future which are really very inspiring.
Իքին դոյդան պիտի խնդրեմ, որ չշտապեք լուսանկարել, ես եւ Vudi-ն ուղենք մեր մազերը նոր, էլի խնդրում։
Շատ լավ, կեցեք, մի հատ էլ էս մյուս թիմին նկարենք, ես ինչքան լավ պայծառ երեխեք են իսկականից։ Ապրեք շատ, երեխեք ջան, հիմա ձեզ ոնց հարմար է, արդեն կարող եք շարունակել մասնակցությունը, ուղղակի ուզեցի մի քանի լավ լուսանկարներ անել, նաև մեր կայքում դնելու համար, նաև ձեր ֆակուլտետի կայքում դնելու համար սոցիալական ցանցերում, այնպես որ շնորհակալ եմ։ Վերջ, Հարություն ջան, ես այլևս ասելու բան չունեմ, մեր լոգոն ինչքան տեսնում եմ, ինչ որ թարս է երևում էկրանին,
ճիշտ եք, ես կուղեմ այդ ընթացքում։
Այդ ընթացքում կուղեք, չարագուշակ բանի ա նման, թարսվել ենք ինչ որ, բայց ընթացքում կուղեք, շնորհակալություն։
Okay, so I'm going to share a short movie about Vudi, who Vudi is and how he exactly understands the journalism and especially photojournalism. So please have a look at this video. I am going to share the video with you. I will share the sound as well. I think you see, right? So here we are. We are starting.
A good portrait photograph will always tell a story about the person in it, and that is extremely important. I'm Vudi. I'm a news, documentary, and editorial photographer. I studied journalism and studied documentary photography and photojournalism also. I was 10 or 11 years old. I just saw somebody coming in my home with a photo camera and I was impressed. What was that kind of machine? So I guess seeing some strange person with some strange equipment, I was very curious to understand what was it about, and I just realized, oh, I like this. So then, yeah, that's how I started. I like very much when I do street photography, people, when they notice me, their facial expression is amazing. I also, most of the time, capture that too. Sometimes they are angry, sometimes they are extremely happy and excited that, oh, there is a camera, you know? It's a very unique experience. The key way to approach is be a human as they are and talk to them and ask them questions, and I'm sure they will be happy too. Hence why it is very important for every single photographer that it is a must that they keep reading books. Because the more you read books, the more you feed your brain with knowledge and with words and with ways of talking to people. I do work alone most of the time, and I'm happy to collaborate with people who are interested to collaborate. I don't feel like I could compete necessarily with any of my colleagues or vice versa. Hence why I'm very happy and open to collaborations, because the more ideas and thoughts that are involved in any kind of project, the better it is. If you're going in a war zone, you're not going to a place where strawberries and cakes are going to fly over your head. It's a place where bombs and bullets are flying over your head. You have to be mentally, physically, and professionally prepared. I don't go there because I like it. Some people decide to be part of the war by offering themselves to serve, or to humanitarian organizations, or to serve to the people on the ground that actually firmly refuse to participate to the war that's happening just below their feet. So my choice is to go witness, document, and report, and bring about stories, and make sure as many people as possible can see them and understand, and perhaps take a decision, what should they do about it? Photography is my politics. It's the way I decide to bring about in the light so people can see what I subjectively care. That's not me.
Yeah, that was Vudi, and now I'm going to give the floor Vudi, who is... Oh, sorry. Yeah, sometimes happen. Yeah, so I'm going to give the floor to Vudi, who is going to represent once again himself and then talk about the topic. Vudi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much from Shushan and the Dean and the rest of the group that organized this from State University of Yerevan and FOICA. And yeah, well, I'm a documentary photographer and journalist, been involved in different stories, investigating certain subjects of crimes and war crimes against humanity, and also certain investigations related to any kind of groups that were related to, like, involved in sort of activities that were not really legal. And so I was very much interested to do war photography and journalism, because it always amazed me how a significant number of people, despite having the circumstance of their choices to either join a government armed forces or rebellion armed forces in a conflict, somehow they always chose to leave. And in my subjective view, these people were somehow very peaceful people, because they just didn't want to fight with anybody. They just wanted to say, okay, you decided to get your guns in your hands and fight for whatever reasons that be. I'm out of here. I got no business about this matter. So that was my very important human curiosity, to try to find out what drove these people to take those decisions. And of course, I was interested to find out also what motivated the other kind of people that were actually taking decisions to take guns and fight. And because I believe finding those answers to those questions will help humanity to understand oneself. Because it doesn't really matter whether we are Armenians or Germans or Italians, we're still human beings, and we share the common thing. We just want to be safe and happy and have enough good quality of living. And I think that there's as much information as we gather, and that means knowledge. And therefore it's so important to pass that on to the generations to come that will be living in our planet. So today we're going to be talking about the safety of journalists going in a conflict zone. As you heard in my 3-minute TV introduction, I say it's not a place where cakes and strawberries are going to fly over your head, but bombs and bullets. And very much so, people that are very stressed so terribly stressed, so they decided to get their guns on their hands, and their own one priority is to stay safe for themselves and to keep the people safe for the reasons why they are motivated to get those guns. Therefore, you have to really be careful what you do and how you talk to people when you're on the ground. So one of the things that's very important to do is you really need to know, are you prepared to hear a gunshot that's going to be fired next to you or not? You really need to understand and respect the fact that you can happen to be in a situation where you can be bombed. So some of the people go through the military service, which I think is the case with Armenia, because serving in the army is mandatory at an age of 18 and plus. So that's a very good advantage for those who want to become reporters covering conflicts after they've gone through the military service, because assumingly they will have the opportunity to actually understand and experience what is the meaning of the use of weapons in any given circumstance, and also not just knowing, but also feeling the actual feel being next to a weapon that will be fired next to you, and the weapon that you will be firing. But one thing you should remember and stick what is, you should never ever use any kind of weapon when you go to report in a war. Remember, you're not a member of armed forces. Regardless how much you feel empathy and sympathy for people on that part of the territory that you go to report from, you should never entertain the idea that you somehow should be carrying a gun. You should never entertain the idea that you might want to take a picture carrying a gun, okay? Because that's a very dangerous avenue to kind of entertain. And you can of course endanger a lot of other journalists. However, let's get to the process of step by step what you should be doing. So in case you do not have military service completed, then it's important to chase what is called hostile environment training course, hostile environment awareness. We do those a lot in the UK, and they do a lot in the United States of America. So basically, it's a rule and regulation that any media personnel that come from the Western news organizations to report a conflict, they should be certified with a certificate that they have been approved and they've gone through a hostile environment training awareness course, which will help them understand the meaning and the risk of weapons and the use of weapons, which will help them understand how can they save their own life or the life of their colleagues if they are going as a crew on the field to report. They will always carry a first aid training kit, first aid kit, which is the kit that's supposed to be helping you to stop the person bleeding, meaning first it's going to be you yourself. So the rule is you do not use your first aid kit into anybody's body but yourself, because if you're going to get injured badly to the point where you're going to be bleeding probably to death, then you don't have your first aid kit anymore to treat yourself. So therefore, by the order and by the rules, you're not supposed to use your own kit to anybody. Of course, you can make a choice of the momentum. If you think, well, it's my friend, I will save his or her life, and that's absolutely fine. However, you have to understand that you might be saving your friend's life, but in a few minutes later, you might be injured and you don't have any more of that kit to save your life. That's why it is deadly important that you and your friend carry first aid kit with them, okay? So in case they get injured, you will use their kit in their body, in their wounds. You will not use your own. So This is part of the training you get during the hostile environment training awareness course. And the rest is what you should know, what should you get ready for is before you go in a territory to report the conflict, also you should do a lot of research. You should understand the people's culture, you should understand people's history, you should read books about it, you should possibly read comments about the current political atmosphere and the situation. You should know by doing the research and understand where is the political polarization in the country, if there is one, what's the opposition, what's the position, and what are the political stances of the leading political group of the country and the opposition political group of the country in regards to that particular conflict. And then you should also try to find material to understand what's the position of the people. Has there been any surveys done to understand where people are standing in regards to the war? Are they supporting or they're not supporting? And then you should understand what's the statistics of death in the times of war. How many civilians have been killed until the day you are researching, and how many armed men may have been killed. And also from the other side of the conflict, the enemy line of that country where you're going from. You should also research to find out what are the principles of war that both countries involved in an armed conflict are possibly may have been violated, you know? So for example, before I managed to get to Armenia, I read a lot of reports about Azerbaijan's armed forces involved in crimes and war crimes against humanity. And I had to read those reports and try to find out even more information, what was happening, what led to that result, so then I could know and be aware of my own journey. How far can I go territorially in the region of Nagorno-Karabakh, for example, and still be safe, you know? There were also rumors and words about possible and potential abduction, which is very, very, very likely to happen to foreign journalists when you go in a foreign country to report. There could be people that might want to abduct you for reasons either just because for ransom, for money, or there could be a number of people that want to abduct you because they want to do a political statement in that regard. For example, there's been a lot of my colleague journalists and photographers and the cases back in the years in the Middle East and North Africa, that they were kidnapped for ransom until their insurance issued a certain amount of money that they asked for. And there were a number of other colleague journalists that were kidnapped for the reasons of making a political statement. So what we know in the profession is that if you are abducted for political reasons, that you are very less likely to get out of that abduction alive. So, but if you are abducted for money reasons, then that's possible because somebody will eventually get out and say, okay, I'm going to give the money you want, just release the journalist, and you're very likely to be alive. However, the sufferings could be crazy. So in the video I say earlier, you have to be mentally prepared. What I meant with mentally means you really have to have an acknowledgement and admit the fact that somehow we live to die as people, because we're born, we live, and then we die. And that death can happen in a circumstance and a time when you might not have control. So as Bukowski say, find something that you love and let it kill you. Probably is the profession of war journalist, that you might have to, the only way to do it. And I think also to manage to be alive with your mental well-being and emotional well-being, and possibly also physical well-being, is to really acknowledge that going in a war zone, you're saying yourself, yes, I can die and I don't have a problem about it, but I am determined to go witness, document, and report and come back alive and tell stories of people that needs to be told. You know, in every war, I had such mentality and such approach. Even coming to Armenia, although it was not very much of an active war zone going on at the time when I was allowed to come in by the government, I still had agreed with myself that, yes, I'm going and I can possibly die. So, and that's not a problem because I love what I do and I'll get down there, meet people, talk about their stories, interview them, put it on the record, and I'll come back alive to the safest way possible I can, and circumstances may allow me, and tell people stories. And I did it. So I did it, but I did it also in many other wars before, since 2007. But if I had this idea of constantly fearing death, then that what could lead me to actually die, because that's the panic that stress you out. And when you are stressed, you will forget the rules, you will forget the information that you have researched about the country, you will forget the culture and the social construction, the mentality of the people there. So you could potentially do mistakes that could be unforgivable, that could cost you with life. You know, for example, as much as I know, none of the Armenian armed men would never want to kill me. If I say the wrong word in a time of a front line, they could as well put a bullet on me. Why? Because I was panicked, and so I say things I shouldn't say, and the person was in the peril of the edge of life, defending his country. And when they find out that someone is like saying something they shouldn't hear, they would of course be very angry, to the point that it could be, because it's just a human being, that they would be so angry they would decide to just pull a bullet on your head. So I'm just creating a hypothesis. Doesn't mean an Armenian army personnel would have done that. Doesn't mean any other army personnel would have done that. But chances are that they can do, because they're just human beings with the circumstance of an extremely stressful situation where their life is in question every single second. Because when you are in a war zone and carrying a gun, you really are extremely in danger. So your life is just accounting on a second to second. Yes, if you're lucky, you will survive, but however, it's very dangerous. So you really should be very, very careful, in a sense that that idea of being prepared for with your mentally is very important, because when you have done and invested a lot to be prepared professionally, meaning the course of hostile environment awareness, and meaning the understanding and how to stay alive, all this will be wiped out because you're already in panic, thinking I'm going to die. And that is also going to prevent you from professionally being able to record stories of people. That's going to prevent you from professionally being able to document those stories and also verify the claims of the people. You know, for example, I remember a situation in Syria when I just woke up in the morning and there comes this gentleman from the rebel armed forces, knock at the door and says, there's been an airstrike about 10 kilometers away from here and 300 people, civilians, are dead, and we would like you to report that. If I was in a kind of a panic, I would just sit down and write the story and file over to my editors. Yeah, 300 people died in an airstrike by the government forces. But I said, well, I need to get there. And the man said, well, you don't trust me? I said, well, no, I trust you, but I need to see it by myself, right? So, and then his response was like, you are our friend. This moment is very sensitive. Okay, when you go in a conflict zone, you have to make clear that you are professionally for professional reasons there. Okay, people might connect with you and feel like you are their friend, and that's fine because that's a human nature. But you really have to make it clear to them that you are there for professional reason as a professionalist, and you can be friends,
but at other times, not in the time of crisis, right? Because they will expect you to report in a way they do understand the conflict. And fair enough, it's subjective way and subjective approach. And fair enough, they are hurt from what's happening in their country. That's understandable. And you are allowed to empathize with that. However, when you write the report, you really have to stick professional, you know, because that's the best service you can do to that country and to these people by sticking, being professional, and never forget about it, you know, because if in that case of Syria, I just be friends of them and wrote a report that was not verified, I'm done. I can no longer be a voice to the people, to the men, women, and children in the midst of war, to get the courage and go there and tell the world what's happening, so then somebody somewhere may decide to react, you know? So you are killing a very important sort of messenger, a very important eye of the world to see what's happening to people, doesn't matter where, you know? So I had to insist to get there. They were telling me it's too dangerous. I said, well, you know, I am aware it's too dangerous. So if somebody's getting to that site, I can get there too. So you just have to find a way to get me there. And yeah, I was taken there and I found out that there were not actually 300 civilians dead. There were 50. However, there were people killed. One person, it's a human being whose life is taken away. And that has to be on the record. But you could cause a lot of damage by reporting things that are not verified and that are not true. So you should never entertain such kind of idea. You should also never, ever entertain an idea of reporting a story on the framework of friendliness. Yeah, I'm a good friend to you because I love you as a human being and respect you for what you're doing. However, I'm here for professional reasons, you know, and you should never take side. Why? Because that way, if one day comes, and that day will and should come, that somebody will decide to take the case to an international court for crimes and war crimes against humanity, it is you and your stories that's going to be respectfully taken by a court of law as an evidence, as an account to say, well, this journalist is credible, is professional, it didn't take sides, and his report and their report suggests so and so and so and so. Why? Because you have established your credibility and professionality, and therefore that's where you can help to bring about the truth in the light, and that's why you are there. So that's the best you can do. Doing things, reporting things where they're not, is not going to help anybody. So one of the sources, for example, if you go in a foreign country to report, is most of the foreign Western journalists do is they look at the CIA fact book. There is in the website of the CIA, it's called the fact book for the country. Like, for example, if you've never been in a country, your best bet to start with is the CIA fact book. They have reports every year about the country, and their reports are quite significantly accurate because it's for their own interest. So they would never manipulate any kind of information in those kind of reports because it would be against their own interest. So they would fail to inform their own personnel and for their operations. So it's really good source of information. Two, it is very important that you try to find a news media organization whose country somehow doesn't have a foreign policy interest for that country, and see what they're writing. For example, I had to look for Armenia, I had to look at German media, because the German government was little to no active whatsoever about the Azerbaijani-Armenian conflict. So I thought if Der Spiegel or Die Zeit wrote about Armenia, they would definitely have a very objective report, because they just decided editorially it's important to cover because it's something that's happening. And German foreign policy has no whatsoever interest to get involved in this conflict. Therefore, you know, I could have some accurate information here. So I looked it up. If I looked at the French media, for example, the French government initially was involved in favor of Armenia. Later things got confused because of the reaction of Azerbaijan in terms of oil and all other matters that the conflict is related to. I thought probably I won't have very accurate information there, because let's say if United States of America will be in favor of Armenia, if their foreign policy is in favor of Armenia, then the American press will be writing some accurate information, but very much so in the line of the interest of foreign policy of United States of America, because they have to justify their politics. So would be with any other news organization coming from a country that would also be hostile towards Armenians. You know, like if you read Turkish newspapers, let's say, then that would be a massive propaganda against Armenians, and very, very understandably so, because they also have been involved with the case of Armenians trying to bring it at an international recognition, the genocide. So that has a history, and also Turks are involved in backing up Azerbaijanis to kickstart the war towards Armenia, you know, and in that case, you also have the Turkish state alongside with Russians allying since the Libyan war and Syrian war by creating strategic rewards to one another. I don't want to dive further in the politics, but I just want to take examples so you can understand where the sources of information could come from and how accurate could they be by judging the foreign policy of the countries where those media come from. Okay. In my subjective view, I'm afraid we have lack of real independence of the media. That's because they do have editorial policy, and every single media that have an editorial policy, their editorial policy in terms of foreign reporting will be in line of the foreign policy of a country where they come from. And I do have experience working as a staffer before with very renowned media, hence why I resigned. I did not want to to use my human and professional capabilities to justify a foreign policy of any country. Whether that's being right or wrong, I really don't care. I care about the people that's facing the war. I care about that person that's a teacher, that's a baker, that's a I don't know, a singer that's living in a village or in a city, and they just want to go about their life. And their life is in the trade market of big powers for whatever reasons they have interest to. So, and I don't want to justify a big trader operation that's going to cost with life to simple people. So I am very, very out there. And yeah, that's why I'm independent and do my best to produce stories as accurate as possible and as questionable as possible in a way that people will actually be able to prove what they say in a way that I can possibly verify and other people can possibly verify what I write and what I produce as a photographic material. And yeah, just to help people understand this as accurate as possible. One other thing that's very important to know is when you go in a war zone, you also need to have this, we talked earlier about using first aid kit, but you really need to have a training about it. And the training, again, will go through hostile environment awareness course. Again, these are courses that we run in the UK and the United States. Before you get to a conflicted territory, you can also research which media would you like to pitch your proposals to? Which media would you like to pitch stories to? And that way, depending on the line of your understanding about the conflict, depending whether you want to decide, okay, this conflict is totally wrong from one side or the other side. So I'm going to decide to go in this country. I'm going to report and support this country. You're not doing journalism anymore, but that's your subjective choice to do that. You can then research the media that's actually supporting that country and then let them know that, hey guys, I'm a journalist, I don't know, freelancer or a photographer, and I'm going to report in this country. I'm going to focus on this and this and this subject. And then if the editors are interested, they will get along with you. They will reply to you. If they're not interested, they will just tell you that they have their own personnel. For example, what I was interested about in Armenia, I wanted to focus on understanding the lives of people that were in public service. I didn't assume that would potentially be interest of any news organizations. I just wanted to come and produce the series of materials. So we were looking, for example, a policeman in Stepanakert who served before the war and during the war and after, and is still serving after the war. We found a firefighter and a pediatrician, and we found a first response unit personnel that was working with ambulances, and a person that was in the army before the war, during the war, and after the war. So these were very interesting human stories to be told, which we are preparing a photo book about it. And we hope that sometime this year we're going to manage to publish. And it was very interesting because people in Armenia, in my personal view, is they're very friendly and very welcoming, and they always will consider you as a guest. Like, doesn't really matter what you say, you're a guest, you're welcome home, therefore you are a friend. So it was quite difficult to maintain a line, a very fine, thin line of trying to remind people, I'm going to ask you questions you may not like. So, you know, be aware of that. Like, I respect that you consider us to be your friends, and humanly, yes, we can be friends, but still we're professional people that are for very professional reasons here. So that's another challenge. And you really have to be also very much prepared about it. And the way you get prepared is by doing the research, as I said before, reading the books about the country, reading not just the books about the history of the country, not just about the politics of the country, but also about the culture, about the religion, about the connections and relations of people with other nations, with nations of the neighboring countries. You know, for example, I could see sometimes there would be tensions if I were a little bit of a critical to the Russians in the times of conversations of me addressing questions to people there. The tension of conversation would raise very quickly. And I had to clarify that, look, I'm not spotlighting here Russia because somehow I have anything any kind of hate for Russia. Just because Russia is involved in your country. And therefore, these are the realities that's happening, and it's actually without any questions ahead. It's going, their policies are going to actually impact your life. And this is my question. I'm not saying this is how it is. I'm asking the question, what do you think? So you have to remind yourself and maintain very much all the time, 100%, that what you're asking is a question, is not a comment, because it's very easy for people to take it as a comment. It's very easy for people to take it as a thought of yours. And really, you must sustain your reserves about giving over your opinion about what's happening. That's not your business. Going to report on a conflict and sharing an opinion about what's happening there is absolutely not your business. You're there only to witness, document, and report as accurate as possible. And possibly 100% of the line, verify every single time stories and claims that people tell you about. They can be your friends, they absolutely can be very nice to you. However, when it comes for you to produce a report, you have to ask for proof. You have to ask for evidence. You have to have a way that you back up your story with proof. Because when time comes, as I mentioned before, let's say for a court trial, you will be asked for those proofs. And if you don't have a backup, you're done. You're going down in the history with those things. And it's not going to be nice. You're not going to feel good. And there are people who could agree to be corrupted in different ways as professionalists. They might enjoy the moment of the decision, which would have been wrong, but they will live for the rest of their life very regretfully. You know, so it's not worth deadly important as accurate as possible, because the accuracy of your information is going to determine how internationally that conflict is going to be seen. And again, safety. If you go in a conflict where you don't speak their native language, you really have to try your best to learn online or find friends who may be from that country or some sort of source to learn their language. The basics, the very fundamental basics. And when you go there, don't you ever tell them that you do understand their language. That's for your safety. Because you can be in the midst of a war zone and somebody might decide to, I don't know, abduct you or take you into a place where you could be killed or could be, I don't know, gone missing forever. And these people, knowing that you understand nothing of their language, they will freely speak to one another about how will they take you out. And it's very important, again, to the mental well-being and the mental preparedness to actually behave as you don't understand anything and wait for it. I can see Shushan is giving a laugh a bit. So that's very important, that you behave as there's nothing happening. And the minute these people walk away, you will call to your safety people that support you, people that are locals. It's also very important that you create network of people of your that you can see that can be friends very dear to your heart, but they don't live in the conflict. They are far away from the conflict. So you can count on them for help. Yeah, when you see there is risk, do not underestimate. Okay, don't underestimate, because you don't want to live with regrets and probably not be able to live anymore even. You know, leave. The minute you see you're suspecting something credibly that could be danger to you, leave on the spot. You may have arranged meetings and interviews to happen throughout the day or throughout the next day. You must leave. You have to understand and respect that your safety is priority number one. And then it comes the stories, because without you being alive, the stories will never be able to be told. Okay, so we have to keep that in mind. Some people tell me, oh, Vudi, you're crazy, you kind of want to die, you're looking to die because obviously you're going in a war zone. Well, I'm not looking to die. I'm looking very much forward to be there, witness, document, and report, and get out alive. I do have the necessary training, I do have the necessary experience, and now I know what I'm doing even more. I thought I knew enough back in the years, but every single year, every single new experience that I go through, I learn, because I'm very, very very committed. I pay so much attention to every single detail with every single individual I know I'm spending time with. And there are people who might not spend as much time, but I know I can trust these people because there is a gut feeling that you develop as you go by. And you know you can trust a certain amount of people when to call them for help. And you must always create that. And of course, it's not just the locals. Before you leave the country, let's say you're going to, I don't know, Iraq or Afghanistan from Armenia to report. You have to have a code of communication with someone that's home in Yerevan that knows that every single day or every second day, you're going to text a message and just say, how are you? I'm very well today. That means everything is all right. Okay. If that person should know, depends how do you assess the situation. If the second day you're not responding, then that person should know who to call. Yeah. For example, you can say you should give a call to, I don't know, Freedom for Information Center or Reporters Without Borders or press association. And then press association, at that press association, the person that's your safety backup home should also have not just an official telephone number, but should have a private number of a person. You know, let's say you should not leave your person that's your safety backup in Yerevan only with telephone number of Freedom for Information Center, but you should also leave with the telephone number of Shushan. So in case, you know, doesn't matter what time it is, they should be able to privately communicate Shushan, you know, and you should, you know, that they should know what to do. And that's something which is subjective to how institutions are organized in every single country. You know, for example, if my backup safety person in London wouldn't hear from me for the second or third day about Armenia, but in Armenia, because the assessment of the conflict, considering it was not an active war zone, I lowered the level of risk. So I said to my friend here, if in 5 days I don't communicate with you, then you should know, you should ring the bells of calling for finding out where I am, because I'm definitely missing. Why? Because Armenia was not an actual conflict, active war zone when I arrived. If it was an actual active war zone, that person would know that every day I would message them if I were going to Nagorno-Karabakh. And if he or she didn't hear within 1 day and the second day hit and I still didn't hear from me, that would be the time when they would call the National Union of Journalists, and the National Union of Journalists will call the Foreign Affairs Ministry Secretary of the UK, and then they would intervene with the embassies and call the Armenian government, and then intervene with Azerbaijani government also to see, you know, if they abducted me. Or who could possibly have me, or I might be dead somewhere, or whatever that means. So whether dead or alive, you should be retreated home. So it's really important that you do have a person home, but that person also shouldn't be some kind of a person who would pressure you, who would say, hey, come home because it's too dangerous. Or, I don't know, something happened, like, our friend is getting married, so come home. Like, excuse me, that's not my priority. You know, or my sister broke up with her boyfriend. That's absolutely not my business. You know, or even your brother could be broken up with his fiancé or wife. It's absolutely not your business. That's something you're not to worry about. You are to worry about your safety and accuracy of the information you gather on the ground where you are. Okay, and you will come back home when you feel like it's time to come back home. Yeah, there should not be any external pressure. Why should you go home and you should not go home? If a story is important that you should stay, you should stay. And if that story to follow up with it extends your stay, if you plan to stay 2 weeks, but the story that you're chasing takes more than 2 weeks, you should stay. It's really important to satisfy all avenues that you need to explore in order to make sure you're bringing a full picture and an accurate story forward for people to know what's going on a particular subject that you've been showing your interest. And that means with all the time, keep having your safety in mind, all the time, making sure that any story is not worth of your life. Doesn't matter what story it is not your worth of your life. For as long as you can do it and you can manage to stay alive, that's great. It's fantastic. You keep doing it. Of course, we're aware there is no risk. There is no way we're avoiding risk there. There is a lot of risk all the time. But we will get the necessary training and the information and knowledge how to actually get that story and still stay alive and manage to tell it. There is another thing that's important. For example, if you go in a foreign country, you might be chased by Secret Service, the Secret Service of the country, or the Secret Service of the enemy of the country that you are reporting from. And that way you will, to avoid having the Secret Service as many information as they would wish about you, what you do is, let's say you're getting out of the airport. The minute you gather your luggage, you remove your tags. You know, everybody has those tags on the bags when they tag you to make sure that to confirm that you had an actual luggage. The minute you gather your luggage, remove your tags and destroy them. And part of the trash leave in one trash can and part of the trash in another trash can. Don't leave them all together, because if somebody's so much interested after you, they will gather those pieces together, check the barcodes, and will eventually find the information about you. Okay? So you want to have to do with these people as little as possible. Okay, so destroy your tags from your luggage automatically. Okay, 1. 2, make sure don't look very glamorous. Yeah, wear casual, smart, nice outfit, which is okay. Yeah, but don't go with a very glamorous, outfit or makeup, or I don't know. I've seen once a lady from America. She was wearing a flower in her hair. No bueno. You're not looking for attention. Okay, the important is as little to no attention to you. Okay, so, and if you have arranged a driver to come and pick you up in the airport, okay, before you travel, you make sure your driver have told you the exact place where they are parking, the number plates of their car, the color of their car, and what they're wearing on the day they are going to wait for you at the airport. Okay? And you just tell them, roughly, I will be landing between 2 to 2:30 p.m. If you're going to land about 1:30, you give yourself time. You land 1:30, you could take about 30 minutes to get out of the airport, and eventually about 2 to 2:30, the person will be there. And you will go out of the airport without destroying those tags, without paying attention to anybody, with knowing exactly where your car is waiting for you, and stay up a distance, check out if the person is wearing exactly what they told you they're wearing, verify the number plate, verify the car color, and decide, okay, this is my guy. I'm sitting in this car. You get in and you just say, okay, you know the destination. Right. What you should avoid is a taxi driver offering you for a ride from, to your hotel or whatever. In case you need that taxi driver, you can say yes, but you can say yes to a person that's actually not offering you the ride, not the very person that's actually offering the ride. Okay, find another taxi man if you didn't arrange your driver to come and pick you up, and don't tell him outside where are you going. Sit in the car and then tell him where you're going. Okay, and that's when the engine of the car is on. How you leave your luggage. Stay outside of the car with the back of the door open until your luggage is in the trunk. Okay, because there could be cases when people play to be taxi man. What they do is they put your luggage in the car and then they just drive. Or they put one of your luggage in the car and take the other one, give it to somebody else. And when you get out of the car at the hotel, you find out, oh, where's my other luggage? And the guy will tell you, well, I thought you brought both of them here. Suddenly it's lost. It's not lost because somebody stole it. And that was arranged. Okay? So pay very much attention to those details. Okay? So stay outside, select the driver you want to take, select the car you want to take, open the door. Do not ever sit next to the passenger seat with the driver. Some people doing my training say, yeah, but I'm a man, I can handle the world. You can be a woman and you can handle also if you're trained in martial art. It doesn't really matter. You're a human being. But you can easily apprehend a person and gain control of the person when you're in the back of the seat. And if for some reasons, God knows what, you might be target of something, it's harder for somebody to shoot you when you're sitting on the back of the seat against when you're sitting in front of the seat. And somebody might shoot your driver and you have less control to get away from it. Because the first thing the driver could possibly hit is the front of the car. And the back door of the car is still possible to be open and you can jump. I know some of you can think, God, how crazy is that to jump? Yes, you do have to jump. There are times we say, God forbid the situation comes to jump, that you may have to jump. Very well so. So, and in case anything goes wrong, and if in case the driver takes another turn somewhere else, you immediately have to react. Okay? So how do you know that the driver is taking another turn? Before, we used to analyze the route, the timing from airport to the destination of the hotel you would go. Now you have your smartphone with you. Okay? So you make sure your smartphone is going to have full, battery and is going to have internet access and all that. And because internet in the roaming sometimes might not go, before you get to that country, you download the offline map on Google. For example, when I landed in Armenia, I didn't have access to internet, even though I had the paid British telephone number. For reasons unknown to me, the internet access was denied and the map wouldn't work if I did not download the offline map of Armenia. And I looked several times the journey from airport to the destination of the home address that I was supposed to be going. So I wanted to make sure this guy is not going to change the destination. And if he's going to change the destination, then you really have to first thing, message to the person that's in your safety list. Okay? That's thing number one. Just say, I'm a little bit concerned because my driver is changing the destination, but I will update you in every 20 minutes. Okay? And see what happens. And then you have a conversation with your driver and say, excuse me, why are you taking a different turn? But this is not the way. And if they try to talk gibberish with you, and then you can feel that there is something wrong, that what you can do is you can ask them to immediately pull over because you want to leave. And if they don't, you can pull their handbrake. And alarm before you do that, you can alarm your safety backup person and then put your phone to call the police, whatever emergency service is on the way. Okay, this happened very rare if you're investigating some really, really big stuff, but just in case it happens, you never know. So, you know,
For interrupting, just my request is to maybe at the end of your speech allow students to ask questions. I'm sure they might have some.
I don't know how much time have we got.
We have around 50 minutes left. So if possible, in 10-15 minutes, let's start. Let's
getting questions from the audience. I will translate, so I will ask students also to ask in Armenian if they do want. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, the topic of safety of journalism is really long. We have a 2 weeks course, like 1 week is with me, and then another week is hands-on practicalities when you have the people that will actually take you to a facility that looks like a war zone, and you will hear gunshots and you will get kidnapped and all that kind of experiences. So you get more familiar with it.
Interesting stories. I'm sure they are. They do have some really good questions to you, and I want to allow them asking this question.
Of course, sure. You can go ahead with the questions. Have no problem about it.
Հարուջան հարցնենք, հա, երեխեքին, եթե ունեն
Okay. Եթե կան հարցեր, ապա կարող եք հարցը տալ անգլերենով կամ հայերենով, ուղղակի հիշեք ձեզ unmute արեք եւ հարցը հնչեցրեք։ Եթե հայերենով է հարցը, ես կթարգմանեմ, խնդիր չկա։ Լավ կլինի նաև raise hand։ Ես տեսա, ես հիմա Անի Վանքյանին unmute կանեմ։ Խնդրեմ։
Ես մի հարց ունեմ, եթե մենք լուսաբանել ենք մի նյութ, որը մեզ վրա ազդել է մեր հոգեվիճակի վրա, այսինքն մենք ընկել ենք սթրեսի մեջ։
Mental state, and now we're in a stress situation.
Կարգավորենք մեր սթրեսակայունությունը։
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, there is a question translated in the English channel. Have you got it, Vudi? Have you got the translation in an English channel or not?
Okay. In different countries, the idea of mental well-being is a different situation. For example, any given way in the UK, we have an issue that I don't know, I don't sleep well, or I feel sad, or I'm kind of crying every other day or every weekend for reasons I don't know. We go to talking therapy. Okay, so one of the things that's very important is you do talk to your general practitioner and ask help for your mental well-being. So you can start with the talking therapy, and if talking therapy doesn't really help you, you can ask what is called a CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy. And it's really important that you do not let yourself down. Like whenever it's like, you know, when we cut our finger, we go to a surgeon because they need to fix it, to stop bleeding. When we are not feeling good, for whatever reasons they be, doesn't really matter if it is only reporting. It can be life. You really need to go and ask for professional help for your mental well-being. And that's very important. You know, before in September 2019 to January 2020, I was on a therapy of cognitive behavior therapy, and it did help me a lot. Like I was a happier person. I knew how to manage my situation. I knew how to deal with my sadness. I learned to understand and acknowledge that when I am sad, I'm gonna cry, and it's okay. It's fine. You know, we cry because we're sad. We laugh because we're happy. So we shouldn't deny ourselves the joy of crying and also the joy of laughing. And that's how we deal with it. And, you know, like there's been cases in Armenia when I was hearing people's stories and they were so heartbreaking, I would shed my tears around my eyes. Of course, I had to try to maintain myself in front of the people, but later I would cry because they were so, you know, very, very terrible experiences. And it's not, for me, it's not a new thing. it's something that I've heard those stories time and time and time again since 2007 that I've been reporting on the field. And believe it or not, I've been crying all these times, all these years. But I can't do nothing more than being a witness, document a report as accurate as possible, and cry when I need to, but keep myself away from the eye of the public, because I don't want to discourage people, because it can affect their impact, their mental well-being and emotional well-being when they see you as a reporter, you're crying a long time. They can feel good because you empathize with them. However, in long term, it might impact that for bad. And there are subjective thoughts about it, but you should maintain yourself together.
Okay, Vudi, I see there are two other questions. So now I'm going to give a voice to Lucy Mambelian.
First of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. It was really an interesting lesson. For example, I could never imagine you have to take into consideration the situations with like taxi drivers, etc. And the question is, the wars and conflicts are always about two sides. But let's say if you have the opportunity to visit only one side, can you report objectively from one side only? For example, if you can visit only Armenia and not Azerbaijan, how objective your story will be then?
If you want to write an analysis, that could be problematic, because if you haven't seen Azerbaijan, then you got no information whatsoever what's happening in the other side of the alley. But if you're going to be a reporter only, which means you will report only what you see and what you can verify, that's absolutely not a problem. When I applied for a press visa to come to Armenia, I applied also to Azerbaijan, and they haven't given me any answer. One answer they gave me is they said they found out through social media that I'm in a region of Nagorno-Karabakh and therefore I was violating their territorial integrity. I said, well, you don't have a de facto control over Nagorno-Karabakh, therefore I have no logical reason whatsoever to ask your permission to get there. And I don't think this is a territorial integrity violation, nor have I ever had any intention to do anything as such to violate your territorial integrity of you or Armenia. I equally applied to both countries' embassies for visa. Armenian government decided you're welcome, and you decided you're going to wait, and there is no response. So I'm still looking forward to hear from you when you can have a decision. That's it. And their choice was, whatever reasons, to not grant me any visa or any access to their country. And I am now back home and working on a photo book about Armenia.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, so I see that there is two other questions, one from Lucine Hakopian. So I'm going to unmute her.
Harujan, please also add me in the list. I also have a question to Vudi.
Lucine?
Այո, շնորհակալություն, կներեք, որ կամերան միացրած չի։
Thank you. I apologize for not being able to turn on my camera, but I'm wondering whether your life has ever been in danger because of or during your professional activity, and has this ever caused you to think of giving up and your professional activity as a reporter?
I'm not sure if I understand. Could you please rephrase the question?
The question is whether your life has ever been in danger and whether this has ever caused you to reconsider your choice of profession and to stop acting as a journalist.
Վտանգի տակ եղել է ձեր մասնագիտության պատճառով։
Okay.
Is it okay? Did you get the question?
Yeah, I understand it. Well, life is in danger. We live to die. So that's my personal statement about it. So whether I'm going to die eating a cake in my kitchen in London, or I don't know, having a party with friends or dying because I was shot by a drone or by a bomb or a bullet somewhere else because I'm telling people stories, for me, sincerely, doesn't really matter. What it matters is I passionately love my job, and I don't really consider it as a job anymore. It's because something I really enjoy doing it. And there has really, I don't remember any time for me to have ever thought that I regret to have taken this line of work. I just love it, and it does give me a great deal of pride that I never violated my professional ethics and code of conduct.
Thank you, Vudi, for answering to the questions. Now I will give voice to Anush Babayan. Please, Anush.
Once again, I would like to greet you and to thank you for this very interesting session with you. I have a question. Do you, as a journalist, adhere to a principle that there are questions that should not be asked by a reporter? Do you think that there are questions that a reporter should not ask in any circumstances?
There could be questions that you might feel uncomfortable to ask. However, the language is a beautiful thing, and therefore there is always way how you can rephrase and rearticulate the question to get to the answer you're looking for. And one important thing is you never go to report a story with an already established opinion. Because if you go with an already established opinion about what's something happening, then you're going to be predominantly looking to find the answers to fulfill with proofs the already established opinion of your thought about what's happening in the country. And that's the wrong thing. And yes, there could be stories, but you can always find your way around to actually get people to answer the question. As long as you keep your integrity and respect other people and be very respectful to the situation of their circumstance, I don't think there will ever be a way when you will not be able to get the answer of the question you may have. But of course, you don't ask trivial questions, which I know people are keen to ask very trivial questions that are absolutely not related to certain things that are very important to the public's interests.
Yeah, thank you for answering to those questions coming from students. Now I will give floor to Shushan. She has a question.
I will ask the question in Armenian, Vudi, if you don't mind, to allow students get my mind.
So my question is as follows. During the Karabakh War, one of the most dangerous thing was the drone that would fly over the heads of the reporters. So you could hear the noise all the time, the buzz all the time, but you could not see them. And the majority of the journalists would say that they incessantly heard the buzz of the drones over their heads, but that they were invisible. So what should the reporter do? What safety measures should the reporter take in order to minimize the threat and the danger coming from drones? Because they're life-threatening, obviously. And secondly, can the reporter raise these issues and take this matter to international instances and organizations? Because the persecution and constant control and surveillance over reporters is also a violation of their right to privacy, their security and safety, and in general is a threat to their life, because journalists are not military objects or entities, and their constant control and surveillance over them is an infringement upon their journalistic freedom.
Yeah, first of all, you can't really predict where a drone or an airstrike could be hitting. What you do is, if when there is a case of two governments involved in armed conflict, then you can expect that there's going to be used artillery and airstrike. And ahead of your travel, you might want to find the history of the both countries involved in armed conflict. When they used airstrike, what were their main targets in the past? Yeah, so if their main targets in the past were civilian residential areas or hospitals or military bases, then you know you will avoid getting around these areas when you hear drones buzzing around or when you hear airplanes buzzing around. So that's your way to kind of keep yourself safe. And if the conflict is ongoing and you're going on the heat wave of that particular armed conflict, then you might very easily know what are up-to-date reports about the main targets of the both countries involved in the conflict. What are they targeting with airstrikes? Okay. And so when you know this, then you do a little bit of research online through Google or other sources to find out where possibly are hospitals, let's say in Stepanakert, where is a school in Stepanakert, where is a military base in Stepanakert, where is a local ambulance, you know, because these could be potential targets by the enemy line of the country that you are going to report from. And that's what you should avoid in the times when you expect there is going to be a jet fighter flying or when you hear a buzz of a drone flying around. 2, you should avoid at any given circumstance to travel on a convoy with armed personnel. You know, there are cases when the government armed forces might offer you to travel with them on their convoy. You should not go with them. You should not go in their military hardware, in their vehicles or tanks or whatever. You do not ever travel with military. You take your own car, your own transportation, and you keep a safe distance of 100 to 200 meters away from the car that's a military, okay? And you should not use a car that's camouflage color. If you're renting a car, do not rent a car that has a black, brown, or green color. Get a car that has a white color and write press clearly in the top of the car. That's what can create a legal consequence for the state actors involved in possibly targeting you, right? However, writing press on the top of the car can actually make you an even worse target because they know you're going to record that. If they're going to airstrike a military convoy and they're not going to airstrike you, they know they're going that's going to be on the record. However, because if you didn't put press, then they could say, oh, we didn't know there were press. Like, how could we know they were press? Like, it was just a car behind a military convoy, and so we thought they were a threat, and they could even say that they were a threat. But they can't say when you actually write press, okay? And when that happens, in case you're in a convoy with the military, when that happened, that let's say they airstrike the front pair of the cars, you really should run away or stop the car by and get out of the car as soon as possible and take shelter. Don't film. Yeah, you can film if you want to. Like in my case, I would film, but it's a very subjective choice of individuals how they do what they do. You know, how they do, because you got nowhere to go from an airstrike. Like I flew several times with American Armed Forces in helicopters. Oh my God, the way they see you from the top, you just pray that gun, that rocket is not going to work somehow. Otherwise, if they target and strike you, you're done. So yeah, and about bring the attention to the international attention for the case of use of such weapons. Well, whether it's legal or legal or illegal to use those weapons, if the government sees it convenient, they will use it. Okay, and they will they will mind, probably they will not mind later to be, I don't know, gone on an international court or so on and so on and so forth. But what is important is that journalists should be given access to those sites. You know, for example, I did struggle a lot to get access to find, to talk to wounded soldiers that were struck with phosphorus weapons. I don't know, to this day, for me, it's unexplainable why I was denied access to talk to these people. You know, that's an evidence of a violation of an international law, and you are not providing, you're not offering access to a foreign journalist that's going to credibly and accurately verify and report the story and document it. You know, that's politically a wrong move of the government in that case, or whoever was responsible to not grant access to those situations. And so, yes, if as far as you give access to foreign journalists to prove that, to document those proofs and report it, yes, then sooner or later you can bring that to an international court and say, this journalist that has an established international credibility has reported this. Here are the evidence. Here is the pictures. You know, here are the testimonies, and we will move forward. And because we also have our side of evidence that we recorded those, you know, and then things can be considered to move forward. That's all we can do.
Yeah, thank you, Vudi. And I see that we have a question from the Dean, Nagash Martirosyan. Please unmute yourself, Mr. Martirosyan, and ask question. Ինչ-որ խնդիր կա? Okay.
Հրաշալի դասախոսություն է եւ մեր հարգարժան հյուրը շատ
presentation, and our honorable guest speaker is relaying very interesting stories and giving us very interesting recommendations. But now I would like to ask a question that we should have started with. So why and how come you chose this specific specialization in journalism, and why did you select the coverage of conflicts? And have you had situations in your life when you had to forget that you were a journalist or a reporter and chose to give aid and assistance to someone who was in a difficult situation, or when you had to take up arms and to defend yourself? Thank you.
Thank you for the compliments. Well, we're all human beings, and we have our thoughts at certain very difficult moments when we hear our fellow human beings' stories that could be horrific and horrendous, and they always are in the times of war. Of course, when you're younger, sometimes you think, am I okay to just be a journalist, or could I maybe help more? But when you grow older and you experience more, you can see that the benefit to humanity is better always and stronger to stick to your professional line of work. And I can tell you, I will not specify which part of the question that you addressed is very often coming across your mind, but it does a lot, and it's very difficult. Like, specifically when you're a human being, that actually you relate a lot with people, and the stories are time and time again. And there are times when you feel like, enough is enough. I'm tired of just writing about it. I want to do something more, which it could sound like you can do more from the moment, which could be a wrong decision, but actually you do more by sticking to your professional line of work. And I just keep going with it. I've got no choice but to be where I am and get more mature and, you know, be out there whenever I think it's needed.
Yeah, thank you, Vudi, for answering to the question. And I got a question from the chat, and I will translate the question for you. The question is coming from a student. So she was really amazed on this talk, and she's asking about the first ever conflict you have covered as a journalist, and what was like the impressive part of that conflict for you?
The first ever conflict that I covered as a journalist was the Palestinian-Israeli conflict in Palestine. And well, I was struggling to manage my own anger against the armed forces that were actually involved targeting civilians in the other side of the conflict. And that was very difficult for me to see that. However, soon enough, I came to my senses of understanding that, yeah, I should probably lay down my anger and stick to being professional, because this is pretty much my way to help, in a sense, like as accurately as possible report and be there to make sure the stories of the people will be on the record and will not be forgotten.
Yeah, thank you, Vudi. I see there are no questions, or I see that there are no people who are raising hands, so I will use this opportunity to ask you a question, because during last year, I mean, already like 4 months, I'm hosting webinars with foreign journalists who are talking about safety, security measures, and also conflict reporting. So regarding to the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, what was like the exact moment when you get that it's also dangerous for journalists, because not all journalists, as you said, are allowed to go to the front line, and there were like people who were picked up by the government or local authorities who were sent to the front line to report, like the guy from Vorgonzo. There were other guys like from Russia, but not like independent or, let's say, affiliated with mainstream media. So what was this when you got this, that okay, to the front line you are not going to be allowed, even if you have this in your mind to go?
I was trying to figure out what were the motivations of the government that were denying access. I wanted to ask the question, why? And the answer to the question why would be, well, we just don't allow anybody. Yeah, but why don't you allow anybody? You know, there's got to be an answer to this. Somebody has to answer, you know. And I do understand that the government had a way of thought. That was my impression, that they wanted to somehow grant access to journalists that they could control the narrative. And I didn't have any access or any form of connection with the government, and I would, of course, never allow such kind of connection that would control my narrative, that would control for me to write anything else other than what I've seen, anything else other than what I could verify what was claimed to be. And for me, this has been all the time a challenge. And I can't help, because I can't violate my professional ethics and code of conduct, because I will owe a lot to a lot of people, and I don't want to go in debt to anybody's lives.
Yeah, got it. Thanks. And I see that there is a question coming from Anush Babayan, so I will give her to speak.
Thank you. I have a question. In our reality, we have some people who are more famous when you use their nicknames. Does the reporter have a right to call someone by the nickname instead of the real name of the person? Is this ethical?
Nickname of...
Okay, these are criminal authorities or political figures who are nicknamed by the public.
If that nickname is offensive, then probably you shouldn't address. Because of the reason of courtesy and professional code of conduct, you should always address the people with their legal names and last names. And their titles, if they do have a title, be it formal educational title, if they wish to be addressed as such, or be it a public service position title, if they have one.
Thank you, Vudi, for answering to the question. And another question from Ani Vantian. So Ani, you can speak.
First of all, I'm very thankful to you for answering my previous question. And my next question, don't you think that there should be some dedicated organizations of psychologists who would specifically work with reporters who cover conflicts, and this would be a mandatory service that reporters could benefit from? Don't you think this is important to have on the ground?
Yes, that would be an amazing way to address those problems of the journalists that could be experiencing, you know, because you're not going to have mental health issues only by reporting in the war. You can have a mental well-being issue also when you report on a particular sensitive story that subjects the government or subjects a political group that has a particular way of approaching to the journalist, because nowadays we live in a world where you as a journalist, you're reporting on a crime and the authorities or whoever behind it somehow don't go and ask for the people responsible to have committing that crime and say, hey, what you did is wrong, so we kind of have to fix this problem. They go after the journalist that's been reporting on it, you know. And I did report it. Investigated a long-term story on a country's president's alleged involvement in crimes and war crimes against humanity, and I can tell you that was a very difficult time for me to sleep, and difficult time for me to go and meet my friends, and I had to avoid people that were very dear to my heart to meet them because I didn't want to risk them. And yes, of course, if there is an established institution that would be looking after the mental well-being and emotional well-being of the journalists that are experiencing difficulties as a consequence of their involvement in certain professional line of work, of like journalistic investigation or so, that would have been fantastic. But there is established in Dartmouth Institute in the United States of America, not yet in the United Kingdom, but in the United States is there.
Yes, thank you, Vudi. I see there are two questions in the chat, so I will get one by one. So Ina is asking, first, have you ever faced the situation when you lost this kind of feeling of fear? If yes, when it has happened to you? And the second question from her was about, have you ever been motivated to shift your camera with gun, take a gun and start shooting, I don't know, take part in a conflict?
Yeah, I never thought about getting a gun, and I will never think about it. Gun is never my option. My only gun is my pen, piece of paper, and my camera. So the gun will never be my option. That's why I'd never gone to do a military service or to serve in any kind of given army. And two, have I ever been in a situation where I thought I was going to die? Was that the question?
Like you lost the feeling of fear.
Oh, yes. Yeah, when I was abducted in Syria. I just thought, okay, I'm done. I've been so many years out there writing and taking pictures. So this is the end of me, because I was very sure that was my political abduction. So when you're abducted for political reasons, you're very likely to die. So, and yeah, I was just lucky that the guy who was serving me food rations happened to have met me. There was a small kid, he was a teenager or so, and then he asked me, "Oh, you're the friend of Haji Mara," which was a regional chief commander of the rebel armed forces in the region of Syria that I was living at that time and reporting. And I was abducted by some other people that may have been paid by God knows what group at that time to like come after me. And for reasons unknown to me, he had gone and told the regional rebel commander and then about my location, and they came and shut down all the people in that house that were holding me. And I kind of was reborn, because I was, in my view, I thought I was gonna, that was it. That was the last day of my life. But I was not afraid for reasons unknown to me, because I just thought, we don't know what's death about. So something is going to be interesting, probably a new life or new something. Certainly something I never had experienced before. So yeah.
Yeah, I see Shushan wants to ask a question. Go ahead, Shushan.
Vudi, during the Artsakh war, there were even international reporters who visited the conflict zone without the protective equipment, without the jackets and helmets, even from journalists from a very well-known mainstream media. So how you will assess this kind of situation, that a journalist is coming from another country to a conflict zone without securing their own security, and they do not have equipped necessarily to protect their lives. And therefore we had cases that journalists got wounded because of the shelling in Matuni and got very serious injuries because of this behavior. How you will assess this?
I think first of all, that's the responsibility of their editorial news desk to have allowed their own personnel to come without protection kit. Second, that's possibly likely that they may have never gone through a process of hostile environment training awareness. Third, it's just a reckless decision. I never in my life took off my bulletproof jacket and helmet in an active war zone. Never. And that did save my life, particularly in Syria. I was shot twice. And if I didn't have my bulletproof jacket, I would have been dead by now or wounded badly. And in Syria, I was bombed 5+ times in the houses where I was living. I was sleeping with bulletproof jacket and helmet in my head. Regardless how uncomfortable it is, and it may be, I was carrying those protective body armor with me, even when I was sleeping. And believe it or not, even when I would go to toilet, I would go with them. And it's very uncomfortable. I admit it, it's true, but you really have to not play game with your life. It's not the script where somebody's writing what's going to happen to you in a war. It's a real life happening. And you don't want to play with it. You want to be serious.
Yeah, thank you, Vudi. And I see another question. It regards to the difference between the war, the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh and other wars. I mean, you mentioned about Syria, you mentioned about the Palestinian conflict as well. So what was the main difference which you have seen during this conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh? And another question is, can you remember anything from this Artsakhi-Azerbaijani war which you have noticed with your eyes? I mean, you were witness.
Well, for me, a war is a war, to be honest. Doesn't really matter who is involved. There was always two different groups of people carrying their guns and shooting for one or another reason. And that's whether I agree or disagree with those reasons doesn't really matter. What it matters is that's a war happening and it's bloodshed going on, and civilians are the first casualties of those wars. Because being an armed personnel in a war, you're far more fairly protected than an actual civilian that's actually losing a lot. And I can't tell much of a difference. You know, in every kind of war, there are all kinds of different ideologies. Sometimes is politics, sometimes is history, sometimes is context of the territory, sometimes is as a consequence of big powers involved behind small nations because they want to have their own strategic rewards and just geopolitical expansion territorially in certain parts of the planet. I can't tell really much of a difference, to be honest. It's just, you have the same angry person with a gun in their hand that's believe at his or her best that they are protecting their land, that they are protecting their family. In every side of the corner of the earth, wherever you go, that's going to be the statement. And that's what it is, you know? And but the big reasons of the full picture behind the scene of the all what's happening in those tiny little details is different. You know, and people just, they have a lot of other troubles all the way already in their life. So they can't really sit down and wait and think, oh, what is it? Whether is it right or not? And they don't even have time for that because the bomb is just launched already in their neighborhood or even if they're in their own house. So it's just what it is, really.
Yeah, thank you. I see there are no more questions. Sorry, just came the question in a chat. So let me. Okay, it's about a feeling. What you feel when during those conflicts you see like elderly people, you see children with crying, they are in dirty clothes. What you feel actually, how you can manage with your feelings and continue to shooting.
It's not a good feeling, but then it becomes a good feeling when you know that what you're gonna put on the record is probably going to grab the attention of somebody who can actually help something. You know, a story out there about the children's difficulties and other civilians' difficulties, to tell the world what's happening and how is it happening. It can ring a lot of bells in other people's hearts and minds, and they may just decide, I'm going to get involved, I'm going to support, I'm going to send some money somewhere, donate something, or send clothes, or send food, or, you know. So, for example, there was a case in Syrian Arab Republic when I was reporting when about 7,000 civilians were trapped alongside the border with Turkey, where Turkish government was not allowing them to cross the border because it said that they didn't have enough tents to house the refugees coming from the Syrian territory. And I went and took those pictures and filed those reports. And then 2 days after that, the United Nations and UNICEF sent tents to Turkey, and Turkey was having no other excuse and justification anymore to keep the border closed. So they decided to open the border and let these 7,000 people in. And a day after, the government airstriked those barracks where these people were housed. So was it lucky that the government didn't decide to airstrike it earlier? Or was it not? Or was that the reason that I was actually went and reported, and actually that made a change to someone decide to send 10 down and then apply political pressure on the Turkish government and then force them to open the border? I don't know. But I know for a fact that I'm part of that story. I'm one of that step in the stones that, you know, these people somehow stepped on it to cross in the other side of the river. And believe it or not, I had to gut through an actual active frontline part of the territory to get to that part of the border. Because people were telling me, oh yeah, government is airstriking every day, and then there were over 7,000 civilians trapped to the border. Turkey is not allowing them, but it's too dangerous to go. And I'm like, well, I need to go. You know, there is no foreign reporter there. I need to go. And I insisted we should go. And they were insisting that it's too dangerous. You're going to get killed. I said, well, so be it. You know, if you guys are armed and you know the way and you know there is a chance, let's take this journey. And we took that journey, and it actually happened. I was then trapped at the border for a few more months, but that was okay. As long as we managed to get these people out of the border. So yeah.
Yeah, so nice. I mean, we are coming to the end of our meeting. Maybe there have been questions not asked to you. So if you want to make a short summary, the floor is yours, Vudi. And at the end, if students have any other question, we are encouraged to ask. Otherwise, in 9 minutes, we are going to have cut of the meeting. I mean, we need to leave the meeting. Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, what I can say is research before you go to a conflict all the time. Make sure your safety is a priority. Be prepared. And for your own sanity, be prepared to the idea that going in a war zone, you can die. And it's not a game. It's not a joke. It's a real thing. And be aware that absolutely you can survive a war as long as you're careful and you're not underestimating any given circumstance and the chance of the risk. By not being panicked, by understandingly being aware what could happen and how, and understanding how could you avoid those happenings and put priority to your safety, and at the same time respecting the fact that you're going to be telling stories of the people wherever you go. So that's very, very important. And yeah, stick to your professional code of conduct and ethics. That matters a lot. That's the beginning and the ending of your career.
Yeah, Vudi, thanks a lot. I will give floor to Nagash Martirosyan, the Dean of the Faculty. He has like closing speech. After that, Shushan will take the floor. Thank you once again, Vudi, for this interesting talk and all tips you shared with the fellow students. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Martirosyan, please.
Thank you, Harutun. As I already said previously, I am very impressed because Vudi is a very experienced journalist and he has covered quite a long way. And he proved, he once again stated it in his presentation that, dear students, you have selected one of the most important and one of the most difficult professions on this earth. And he once again confirmed that succeed on this way, only those professionals succeed who are not afraid of anything, who are completely committed and dedicated to their professional career, sometimes paying for that with their own lives. Dear colleagues, you know that during the Oscar award ceremonies, the most frequently used word is thank you. So I would like to give 3 words of thanks. The first word of thanks goes to Vudi for this very interesting and comprehensive presentation. The second word of thanks goes to Foika, to Shushan Doidoyan, a teacher of the journalism department at Yerma State University. Thank you. This was very interesting. This was quite necessary, and I'm convinced that the upcoming 2 other sessions will be as interesting as this one, and we will have the same rate of attendance. And my last word of thanks goes to Harutun Zataryan. Kudos, it was excellent, well coordinated. I'm also thankful to our students, to our colleagues who were present here, who were raising so many and such interesting questions. And thanks to all of you for your patience and for your time. And I would like to reciprocate the thanks because your role is really important for making this session happen. Thank you, Vudi, for this very interesting talk. And there are two things that I would like to sum up today's event with based on and building up on your presentation. It truly sticking to and being committed to the ethical codes and codes of conduct are a primary thing for journalists. And unfortunately, media outlets in Armenia, very few media outlets in Armenia are really close to or adhering to codes of conduct or ethical principles. And unlike these media outlets, the journalism students at YSU Department of Journalism have developed their own code of conduct, and they are trying to follow it. And the second most important thing is the personal safety and security, and nothing is more valuable than human life. And your life as a journalist is of highest value, and you personally as a journalist and the media outlet should take exceptional cases in order and steps in order to make sure that your life is safe and secure. And this is the basic rule. So whenever you go to conflict zones, you as journalists need to wear your armored vests and your helmet, and where you can find them. Freedom of Information Center of Armenia can very happily provide you with them. And if you are interested in traveling to Artsakh in order to do some professional reporting, we can gladly give you both helmets and armored vests. And I know that our partner organizations too have such protective equipment and gear, and you should never ever disregard or underestimate this issue, because it seems that there is relative peace right now, but the reporter should primarily be concerned with his or her personal safety and security. So once again, Vudi, thank you very much for this very interesting talk.
Very pleased.
So everyone thanked everyone. I mean, only the interpreter is not yet given thanks. So I would like you to applause to Christine, who was today our translator, and she helped our students and the ones who were listening in Armenian. So in these applauses, we are going to end our meeting with Vudi. So keep in touch, dear students. We are going to have our next meeting during upcoming weeks. Take care and ciao, bye.
Thank you, bye.